It's not just you feeling like every grocery trip is an ambush, it is getting worse. Food prices in America are rising faster than your paycheck, and no one at the top seems to care. As of September 2025, grocery costs are up 3.2% year over year, but compared to before the pandemic, we're paying over 25% more for the same basket of food. The average family of four now spends nearly $100 a month on groceries. That's $300 more than in 2019. And wages? They haven't caught up. Real average weekly earnings have fallen about 0.6% since 2021, meaning your money buys less food every single month. The USDA reports that 1 in 7 households struggled to afford groceries this year, the worst rate since the Great Recession. Meanwhile, companies like Tyson and PepsiCo are posting record profits, even as shoppers switch to smaller portions and cheaper brands. So if you've been standing at the checkout line wondering, how did I spend $80 on 10 items? You're not alone. You're living in a country where the price of survival has become unsustainable. This isn't just inflation, it's a silent collapse. One receipt at a time. Right now, in America, food isn't just getting a little more expensive, it's quietly turning into an everyday battle. I mean, think about it. The overall food inflation rate in the U.S. hit 3.2% year over year in August 2025. That may not sound dramatic to some, but when you stack it year after year, you realize from 2020 to 2024, the All-Food Consumer Price Index jumped 23.6%, while all items CPI rose only around 21.2%. And who is it hurting the most? People like you and me who are busting it every day, making just enough, trying to cover bills and still feed ourselves and our loved ones. You ever walk into the grocery store thinking you'll pick up a few staples and walk out feeling okay, and then the total hits your card and you're like, what just happened? That's not just you, this is systemic. We've got shrinking margins at the farm level, rising feed costs, transportation costs, labor shortages, and all of that gets packaged into our carts without us saying yes. There are reports of fundamental supply issues in sectors like meat, beef, chicken, and eggs, where major price jumps are happening. So while everything else might feel normal, your grocery bill is inching upward, and if you're living paycheck to paycheck, that little inch becomes a mile. It's also fascinating and angering to realize that this is happening even though wages haven't kept pace. You might be working double shifts, saving every cent, and still watching the food line item swallow more of your budget. You're not doing something wrong. The system is stretching you thin. And the weird part? We haven't even hit the worst yet, because every time there's a global disruption, a drought, a transport strike, or policy change, the food cost gets hit again. And we're still recovering from the last shock. Have you noticed how your what I used to buy list is different now? I have. Because while food inflation of 3.2% sounds modest, it's cumulative. You buy a dozen eggs and it's $5.50 instead of $380, and then you skip the steak one night, buy less salad, maybe trade fresh fruits for canned. From 2024, food inflation surged. That shrinkage of our diet isn't subtle, it's erosive. And if you're already stretched, you're cutting not the want but the need, fresh produce, lean meat, meds with food. We're not just paying more, we're settling for less. What's even more sobering is that this trend is disempowering. When you feel like your paycheck disappears just to have what you're supposed to have, the idea of savings, the idea of getting ahead, starts to feel mythic. You're stuck in maintenance mode. The cost of food is eating into your cushion, if you ever had one. And we know that eating poorly, even if you're still eating, has consequences. Health issues, more doctor visits, more stress, costs that loop back and drain you again. Another piece, food at home versus food away from home. The data show that food at home inflation is lower, but still, while eating out is one of the first things folks cut, home groceries are still cost rising. That means you might think, okay, I'll cook at home. But what you cook is less nutritious, smaller portions, fewer options. It's not just financial, it's emotional. You remember when you could pick up that item without blinking. Now you're scanning labels, checking quantity instead of quality. That's collapse in slow motion. Let me pull this back for a second. You're working hard, you're trying to get ahead. Maybe you're in your 20s or early 30s like many of us. You're thinking, I should be building, saving, maybe buying something one day. But the cost of food is becoming a hidden tax. It bleeds your disposable income. That means you delay doctor visits, skip taking care of minor car issues, you stop investing in yourself, you don't take on extra education or pivot jobs because everything else is ticking in the red. So what should be a launch phase becomes a survival phase. Here's a data point. In a recent survey of workers, a large share said they were skipping meals or cheaper lunches to make it through the week. That's not anecdote, it's a pattern. When food becomes unaffordable, long-term outcomes suffer. And how about this? When your grocery spend goes from, say, $300 a month to $350 or $400 because of inflation, that's $50, $100 gone from somewhere else. Maybe your savings, maybe your rent cushion, maybe your side hustle fund. Multiply that across months and you're seeing why more people give up. Not because they don't try, but because the deck is stacked. We're talking about results that hit young adults and even older generations. You've got rent, insurance, vehicle costs, and food, and the buffer is gone. And when the buffer is gone, one unexpected expense, car breakdown, medical copay, roof leak, and you're falling backwards. It's not just about how do we afford food, but how does food cost force us to give up other things and prevent us from ever getting ahead? You ever feel like you're doing everything right and yet still losing ground? That's no coincidence. Because the cost of food in America is not just a line item, it's a fulcrum point. When it shifts upward, the whole financial balance shifts. Look at this. Food inflation at 3.2% in August 2025. Compare that to wages stagnating or only inching up. Many people making decent hourly wages still find themselves squeezed. Then layer in that from 2020 to 2024, food CPI rose 23.6%, while all items only 21.2%. That means food rose faster than most other consumer goods. The result? Fewer resources for other basics like housing, utilities, transportation. And let's be clear, this isn't a faraway theory. This is real life. Real young people, real families. You're living week to week, seeing your bank account swing, not the future you hope for. The food cost increases make you think twice about grocery store runs, about doctor visits, about whether to keep the car or downgrade. Over time, hope shrinks. When hope shrinks, giving up grows. What many don't notice, the feedback loop. Food cost rises leads to less money for other things, which leads to fewer opportunities for career or migration, or savings, which leads to being stuck in place, which leads to more vulnerability when the next cost shock hits. And there will be more cost shocks: climate, supply chain, trade policy, geopolitical. If you're already stretched because of food cost, you'll be hit hardest. This is the silent collapse we're living through, where our national narrative says recovery and growth, but on the ground, people's lives feel like steady erosion. When you're living in this pattern, you don't think, I'll recover next year. You think, how many more months can I hold on? The cost of food isn't just inflation, it's the anchor dragging down your future. And until we talk about that as more than groceries cost more, we won't see the root of why America's younger generations are feeling defeated. Here's something you might not have realized. Every grocery run right now isn't just about did I get what I needed, it's a signal that your future is narrowing. Hear me out. According to the Economic Research Service, ERS, food-at-home prices increased by about 2.7% year-over-year in August 2025, while food away from home, that restaurant dining out ticket, shot up roughly 3.9%. That doesn't look huge on its face, but when your paycheck hasn't grown in real terms, in fact, real wages have actually fallen by roughly 0.7% since January 2021. The impact is massive. You're paying more for food, doing the same or more work, and it means there's less left over to cushion you when something goes off the rails. Think of it like this. You're rowing a boat upstream. The water's getting stronger, the current's pulling faster, but your paddle income isn't any longer. That means what should be forward motion is actually stagnation. You're keeping yourself alive, putting food on the table, maybe even squeezing in a dinner out once in a while, but that forward momentum toward living, thriving, saving, having breathing room, that's evaporating. The ERS data show that between 2020 and 2024, the all-food CPI rose BOS 23.6%, whereas the overall all-items CPI rose about BOS 21.2%. That means food costs rose faster than the average of everything else you buy. If your income rose in line with everything else, it still wouldn't fully cover your food cost jump. And here's the worst part. The buffer is gone. In that same period, data show households in the lowest income quintile spent 32.6% of after-tax income on food in 2023, while the middle quintile spent 13.5% and highest income roughly 8.1%. If you're young, living on your own, working multiple shifts, and still wearing yourself out to stay afloat, you're not just surviving the week, you're delaying every life step. That vacation you wanted, that savings you were going to build, maybe even moving out or starting a path you dreamt of. Food costs are stealing those chances. I want you to picture this. You walk into a grocery store, you have your list, you're mentally ready. You load up the cart. Your heart drops when the number pops up. And you walk out thinking, how did we get here? That's exactly what lots of us are feeling, and the truth is, it's not just about money, it's about hope, dignity, and feeling like you're in control. According to a recent survey by Intuit Credit Karma, about 27% of Americans admitted to skipping meals because of high food prices, and about 18% said they considered applying for food assistance. That's not some remote statistic. That's someone choosing starvation or savings or rent, and none of those feel good. When your food budget is ballooning but your options aren't, you start making trade-offs. Cheaper food, less nutritious food, skip doctor visits, or you bump off something else just to make the grocery run work. That kind of stress builds up. It's mental exhaustion. And what you're aiming for, a job switch, a side hustle, getting help paying off debt, starts to feel further away. Real wages aren't keeping pace. Your time is being eaten not just by work, but by worry and calculation and fridge checks. The system says you have choices, but your choices are being eaten by price tags. And it hits hard when you look around. Your friends might be renting more, buying less, working more, socializing less, all because we're paying to just stay in place. That's not living, that's sustaining. The cost of food isn't just in dollars, it's in the loss of momentum. The loss of what you hoped you might do with your life at 25, 30, 35. It's the shrinking of possibility. Okay, here's where you start to see the long game of this crisis. Because when you spend an extra $30, $40, $50 a week on groceries just because of inflation or price shocks, that's money that doesn't go to your future. That's money that doesn't go to your dreams. And worse, you might feel you're doing all you're supposed to do, job, shifts, maybe even side hustle, but you're still anchored. According to the ERS, in 2024, total U.S. expenditures on food and beverages hit $258 trillion. But the spending share is shifting. 58.9% of that in 2024 was food away from home. Restaurants, takeout, meaning we're already stretched that far. If food costs go up and you still want a baseline life, car, job, maybe save, something else has to shrink. Now imagine you were expecting to use extra income to move, change careers, go back to school, or save for home. But instead you're using it just to get back to even. Studies show that time price of food, how many working hours you need to earn food, has increased. Between 2019 and 2024, the extra time you must work to buy the same basket of groceries rose from Bacor's 3H51 menus to 4H27 menus. That's nearly 10% more work just to buy what you used to buy, and that means fewer hours, less breathing room, fewer chances to level up. That opportunity cost is huge. Your career doesn't just stall, it might reverse. Your ability to relocate for a job, to take a risk, to attend continuing education, all of that is getting squeezed. You might say, but I'm doing fine. I'm working. And that's true. But being able to build is different from being fine. Many are stuck trying to hold the ground, doing everything right, but the ground itself is shifting under their feet. And if we don't talk about how food cost is a key anchor dragging the rest of life down, we'll keep asking, why do so many young people feel like they're giving up? Instead of, how do we fix the system that's forcing them into the trap? There's a darker layer that nobody wants to admit. In many parts of America, it's not just that food is expensive, it's that food is disappearing. The USDA estimates that over 17 million Americans now live in areas defined as low-access, low-income food deserts, where grocery stores are more than a mile away in urban areas or over 10 miles in rural ones. And as inflation grips distributors, the situation's turning from inconvenient to impossible. Dollar stores and gas stations have replaced local grocers in more than 1,400 rural counties. That means instead of a produce aisle, you get aisles of ultra-processed, sodium-packed junk. And those are now the only affordable calories for millions. We've reached the point where poverty isn't just about lack of money. It's about forced malnutrition. Even worse, the corporations stepping in to solve this are the same ones profiting from the problem. Retail giants are quietly shrinking package sizes and raising unit prices, a move so widespread that economists call it shrinkflation. A box of cereal that cost $4.99 in 2020 now costs $6.79 and has 10% less content. Meanwhile, between 2020 and 2025, companies like Kraft Heinz and General Mills reported profit margins rising faster than inflation itself. You feel it every time you open a smaller bag of chips or buy a family size that barely feeds two. And what happens when people can't afford healthy food? Disease skyrockets. Diabetes, hypertension, depression, all linked to diet, are exploding in lower-income communities. Food has become a wealth filter. If you can afford organics, you buy years of life. If not, you're feeding yourself poison labeled as convenience. The collapse isn't loud. It's not on the news ticker. It's in your pantry. It's in every rural town where the last grocery store shut down, every city corner where fast food replaced farmers' markets. This is how empires decay, not with war drums, but with empty stomachs and cheap calories. You ever notice how weird it is that we have aisles stacked with food, yet so many of us are struggling to eat? America produces more food per capita than almost any other country on Earth. We're sitting on abundance. And yet, a 2025 Feeding America report shows that 1 in 7 households experience food insecurity this year, the highest level since the 2008 recession. Let that sink in. 48 million Americans worried about how they'd feed their families in the richest nation on the planet. Meanwhile, food waste in the U.S. is up 58% since 2015. We're throwing away billions of pounds of food every year while tens of millions can't afford groceries. That's not an accident. That's an economy designed to favor profit over nourishment. And you know who pays for that imbalance? You do. Because every time food gets tossed, every time a supermarket destroys unsellable stock, instead of donating it, the cost of inefficiency gets rolled right back into your bill. That's part of why food inflation feels permanent. It's built in. It's why you pay $7 for butter while the country exports billions in dairy and grain. The illusion of plenty makes you think there's no crisis. But behind those shelves, there's rot, literal and moral. We were told America's food system is resilient, but resilience means affordability, not just abundance. If you're watching your grocery bill rise faster than your paycheck, if you're buying less food for more money, you're not alone. The truth is, we're all living inside a contradiction, a nation that can feed the world but can't feed its own, citizens without pushing them into debt. And when survival becomes a subscription, that's not freedom. That's economic servitude dressed up in consumer choice. Let's end this part on a truth no one wants to say out loud. Food is no longer just food. It's control. It's leverage. It's the last piece of the American dream that hasn't been outsourced, and now even that's being corporatized, financialized, and gamed. In 2025, over 80% of the grocery market is controlled by just 5 companies: Walmart, Kroger, Costco, Albertsons, and Ahold Delhaize. That means a handful of executives decide the price of milk, the shelf space of your local store, even the brands that survive. You think inflation is supply and demand? It's monopoly math. Global grain traders like Cargill and ADM saw record profits during the 2022-2024 inflation spikes, not despite rising prices, but because of them. They made billions while families rationed dinners. That's how the system's wired. Scarcity equals margin. When you pay $8 for a pack of chicken breasts, part of that goes to fuel, part to labor, but a big chunk goes to investor returns. Food has become a financial instrument, traded, speculated, hoarded, while the average American family now spends 11.3% of disposable income on food, the highest in over 30 years. And you can feel it, can't you? That sense that something's breaking. People are exhausted, not just by prices, but by the feeling that they're being squeezed from every angle. Housing, health, gas, food, all the essentials. You can't skip any of them. And that's the trap. The real collapse isn't visible in GDP charts or Wall Street indexes. It's visible in the faces at checkout lines, in empty refrigerators, in parents skipping meals so their kids can eat. That's not failure. That's the symptom of a nation quietly bleeding out through its grocery aisles.